welcome to a Free Float Media crossover.
Woo. Yeah, that's Mike Levin you just heard, an activist, investor who lives and works in Chicago.
And that's Damian Rollis, who's really enthusiastic about Mike Levin living and working in Chicago. Damian Rollis, a co-founder of Free Float Analytics, coming to us from Portland, Maine.
And that was Ann Lipton, a law professor. I think we should shout everyone's names at the University of Colorado, who researches and teaches securities and business law. I before you say any more, I edit this show every single week, and it's really a joy to say the thing that I have to edit rather than just editing.
Oh, just thing. Now? Great.
To just
All right. Hey, Matt Moscardi. That was Matt Moscardi. He's the other co-founder of Free Float Analytics. He's coming at us from Connecticut. Of course, followers and listeners here know that Ann and I bring you Shareholder Primacy, which is our podcast about activist investing, securities law, and all the ways the financial and legal worlds intersect and collide in real life.
And this is also Proxy Countdown with our big crossover show for the week of July 6th, 2026, with my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi.
Yeah.
So on today's show, we did this back in December. Let's do it again. We're gonna look back at everything that's been happening since December. Is that a fair summation of what we're doing?
That's right.
A wrap up of a proxy season that, Mike, I know you don't love the term proxy season, but we're going to wrap up something, right?
We're going to wrap up the last set of voting that roughly ended up to now.
Yes.
Correct. So, and let's so we'll send our followers here, both our Proxy Countdown and Shareholder Primacy followers here, off with some worthy, provocative ideas to ponder as vacations get underway. As a reminder, if you have questions, you can find Ann and me, Mike, at Shareholder Primacy, one word, at freefloat.llc. And of course, Damian and Matt, if you have questions and comments for them about Proxy Countdown, you can find them at Damian, Damion, at freefloat.llc. With those questions as well. So, as we hinted here, we're looking at overall results from the meetings, from the annual AGMs, annual general meetings borrowed from the continent in 2026. We want to know, how did companies and shareholders do relative to each other in AGM votes? We'll look kind of differently at shareholder proposals, and then also a little bit at proxy contests. Let me begin with the proxy contest stuff, if I may, colleagues. Can I do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
There were many fewer proxy contests that went to like a voting outcome.
My data says there was one. Is that possible?
Only one? Well, maybe.
Well, according to what I looked at, there was one traditional proxy contest that went to full public vote, and that's at a small...
there were a few that were,
well,
but the other ones were like really smaller cap companies, really tiny ones. I was involved in one that went to a vote, but that was way back in October, where I ended up on a board as a result of a shareholder vote.
Are you still on that board?
I am.
Okay. We won't. I'll erase that company from my notes.
That's a totally different story. That's the one that we joined the board and put into bankruptcy 2 months later.
Oh,
so I've been working on a Chapter 11.
Matt,
so
we should invite him to our board and see how that goes.
No, please don't.
That's the worst idea you've ever had.
Yeah. Anyway, so there have been a lot fewer contests that go to a vote this year, and normally, for all the attention that proxy contests kind of get between the proxy advisor recommendations and all the competing news releases and the fight letters and all the advisors and all that kind of stuff, there's, usually you could count the number of proxy contests that go to a vote in the U.S. like on one hand, almost two hands. And there were even fewer this year. There were probably 12 or 13. So far this year, there have been only 8 or 9. Again, a lot of them were tiny. Activists prevailed at roughly the same rate as last year, maybe a little lower. Out of 10 that I looked at, there were only 3 where the activists won anything, and the other than one I was involved in, where we won a majority of the board, the other two were like one-seaters. So activists, just based on those kind of results, looked like they had a bad year. But on the other hand, there were lots of settlements, a lot of stuff was going on in the background. We'll talk about this a little bit later too.
I was going to say this was probably an intentional strategy, right? To avoid the public filings.
This is not an accident,
right?
There was, when you settle, if you're an activist, when you settle, you generally get all your expenses paid. You get most of what you're looking for. If you're the company, when you settle, you get you avoid a lot of adverse publicity, and publicity was getting more adverse.
Yeah.
This year,
well,
as activists made things more personal. Go ahead.
In fact, Matt, this kind of answers the question of the craziness at Lululemon, where it got so adversarial that Lululemon ended up essentially saying, what's his name? Chip Wilson?
Chip Wilson, founder.
Yeah.
Yep.
Basically, they were like, if you shut up for the next 18 months, we're going to give you everything you want.
Yes, that's how it works.
To me, that's the summary of this proxy season. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what kind of settlement is that? Like, shut up and we'll give you anything you want? Like,
to Mike's point, I think they just, I don't know. I think there's a strategy of...
Stop criticizing management. Wilson was a very credible critic. He was the founder.
Wait. Can I push back on credible critic, given the fact that guy helped destroy shareholder value, got ousted from his own company?
I'm saying credible if you're a voting shareholder.
But I mean, the voting shareholders seem to have no memory, right? Like one of the questions that I like,
absolutely right.
So what makes it really credible? I mean, like we don't remember that it was literally just like 9 years ago that he got
I'm just
ousted.
saying that compared to some schmo like me, who's some outsider who just owns a few shares, a guy like Wilson, a founder, whatever, tends to his critique sometimes carries a little more weight.
Oh yeah, for sure.
With shareholders compared to a portfolio manager.
I don't
like that way, but
yeah, Matt, it takes actual due diligence to do what you're suggesting, which is to look at his failures and the controversies but I think
heaven forbid we do that.
To Mike's point, he was the founder, and that's it. That's all we need to know.
Well, he had 8%, 7 or 8% of the shares, right? Like
he had a decent
big
so
chunk.
Anyway, so let's look at some of these. So again, there were almost no notable proxy contests that went to a vote this year. Nothing like 2 years ago we loved talking about trying at Disney and Norfolk Southern with Ancora. There were all these huge, big, delicious. There's nothing like that this year. There was, you guys know who Biglari Holdings is? Sardar Biglari.
Oh,
that guy?
yeah.
Sardar had
the self-styled Warren Buffett of
right,
that's what he calls
BH.
himself.
Biglari Holdings or Berkshire Hathaway, trying to confuse you. He lost two, Cracker Barrel and Jack in the Box. These were not proxy contests, literally where he was able to elect directors, because Cracker Barrel in particular had modified their bylaws. And you and I talked about this,
yes.
where they totally created bylaws that precluded him from running director candidates. So instead he did withholds, and he lost badly. But then there was some other stuff. So in lieu of some of the vote for director kind of proxy contests, there's an increase in these lot more interesting ones. So there was a lot of M&A activism. There were two mergers that terminated as a result of shareholder solicitation. CoreWeave couldn't merge with, I'm forgetting the name, with Core Scientific. And an activist called 2Cs was able to
is this unusual?
Squish that. It doesn't always happen, no.
Okay.
And Star Surgical lost a vote to approve a merger because of some friends of mine at Broadridge an activist I know called Broadwood in New York. So there were two mergers that couldn't go forward because of activism. And then but interestingly, some other non-board election stuff, like withhold campaigns, didn't seem to work really well. Biglari lost both their withholds. There was a prominent Withhold campaign at Victoria's Secret. That one started as a proxy contest. The activist, which was a not very well-known activist called BRRC, they started a proxy contest, withdrew the candidates, tried to vote no, and then lost that one. So we started to see, go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say. So what do we think here? Is this the sort of immediate effects of several years of an anti-ESG vibe, which is suggesting,
or the neutering of ISS and Glass Lewis?
Well, neutering of everyone. How about which is the companies and management know best, and everyone else should just shut up.
I think I have a slightly different view about why we're not seeing the normal kind of vote for director proxy contest.
Why?
First, universal proxy led people to settle a lot more. Second, companies have through other means, like through aggressive use of advance notice bylaws, prevented or at least dissuaded activists from trying to run these traditional proxy contests. They're doing other stuff. They're trying to oppose mergers. They're doing vote no's. They're trying to maybe do bylaw amendments, things like that. So there's stuff outside the traditional, or what we saw was the traditional proxy contest director election stuff. So anyway, so in that context, there were a lot of settlements as I started talking about. We started talking about Chip Wilson settling at Lululemon. I don't know if you folks saw, a traditional, very good activist named Impactive Capital, Lauren Taylor Wolfe. She did a really unbelievable job to get like 3 or 4 directors at a company called WEX. WEX is the ticker.
WEX is right here in my hometown.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait! You said she? I don't think
Lauren Taylor Wolfe. Yeah, she's.
I don't think we've ever covered.
Yeah,
this is the
go
first.
Look her up.
First activist investor woman I've heard of.
She's
okay,
pretty badass. Everyone forgets that Starboard Value, Jeff Smith, started a project at TripAdvisor, which was a long-time activist target, and was able to get a good settlement out of them. Starboard also got a good settlement at CarMax, got a couple directors elected. And then, lest we forget, there was the 2 gun makers going after each other.
Oh, God, that was great.
Sturm Ruger. Great how, Ann? What was that about?
No, it was great because I think one of them, I forget which one, had like a camo-colored proxy card.
Of course.
Which tells you 2 things. One, this is not a pitch to institutions. And 2, this is a great thing for class demonstrative.
Yes, right. So that's Beretta. Beretta and Sturm Ruger. Beretta was going after Sturm Ruger. And I think Sturm Ruger was the company had the camo-colored proxy card. So there are all these really interesting. So a lot of the big ones that we normally would have sort of celebrated as going to a vote and sort of looked at those carefully, just they all settled. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's others to go. This is one of the points I wanted to make, is that proxy season is not quite a season anymore. There's like 5 or 6 proxy contests still to be prosecuted between now and September. So a third or a half as many as we've already seen have yet to have shareholder meetings. Then we'll start over again with some annual meetings later in the calendar year. So one of the biggies that we started to follow, but there was some news about that over the weekend, was, have you guys followed this company called FRMI? FRMI is the ticker, and with
I'm
Toby
aware
Neugebauer.
they're having a fight in Texas. Yeah.
Right. So that'd be an interesting. It'd be a Texas domiciled. They're like an AI power campus.
Yeah,
oh, right.
Yeah, that's why I know them.
Company. Yeah. Right. And so Toby Neugebauer, this was fascinating. Toby Neugebauer was the founder. He was buddies with the former governor there, Rick Perry. And they started this company to do a power campus for AI data center. They got some really great land outside of, I think, Laredo. I can't remember where. He called a special meeting. The company went public in a SPAC like a year and a half ago. He then called a special meeting while he was CEO. This is like in April, to elect new directors because he sensed that the current board was starting to oppose him. And then they fired him, and then they canceled the special meeting. And then because he owns 40% of the shares, he started soliciting to run a special meeting for the end of June or sometime in July. Would have been this month. So he started soliciting for that, spending a ton of money on solicitors and so forth. And then just over the weekend, he called off he suspended his demand for a special shareholder meeting to elect new directors that would be friendly to him. And it's either because they've looked like they're making progress and they're going to find the right tenant for this AI data center campus, or the other view of this is maybe he was starting to lose and he wasn't going to get this special meeting he was looking for. So that was one of the ones we were kind of tracking.
This sounds a bit like Chip Wilson. He was accused in a filing of threatening, abusive, and bullying behavior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I, honestly, actually, when looking at the activist campaigns this year, it feels like more of them were driven by ex-founders, fired founders, or founders themselves than in past
Does
years.
feel that way.
And even Biglari, he's been attacking Cracker Barrel for 20 years.
Oh, this is
17
this white
years.
whale, man. He hasn't been able to get that for right.
It's like that's not even new. What I actually feel like this would be the year that activism is most important, given the fact that the SEC has neutered everything other shareholders can do to hold a company accountable, between no action and exempt solicitation. And not to say the shareholder proposals were that impactful anyway, but at least it was a conversation piece and there was some sort of media component to it. But now there's none of that really at all that's as effective.
Right.
And the activists disappeared simultaneously.
Yeah. Well,
Where
they
is
didn't
everybody?
disappear. They
didn't disappear.
negotiated
Everyone
out of
faded
sight of
into the
public
background
filings.
and did
Yeah.
rearguard actions to get what we needed in terms of changing companies to try to improve their business prospects.
It's a
without
loss for
going to votes.
disclosure, but I don't know if it's a loss for the activists.
I think we need to push Mike to like do some massive Trian like attack
Yeah,
on
great.
just
Just cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. I'd rather, but I'll think about it. How's that?
we'll just give you the data. We'll just give you the
that
data.
would
That's
be
half the
fun.
money. That's
You'll
half
tell
the
me
money.
where to go. All right. So that's kind of what was happening with the high visibility proxy stuff. I thought maybe we should take a minute or a little bit of time and talk about what was happening regulatorily, because there was some, I don't know how loud or quiet things were first half of the year, but there were some things happening like at the SEC or at the states.
Yeah.
So what did that look like? I was going to say, what did that look like, somebody, but I know who the somebody is.
Yeah. Okay.
How dare you?
Yeah, the big story at the SEC level, it actually began last year when the SEC announced it would no longer adjudicate whether shareholder proposals comply with the federal rules. So it used to be like if a shareholder submitted a proposal and the company wanted to exclude it, saying it didn't comply with the rules, they'd tell the SEC, and the SEC would kind of give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if the SEC said it was okay, it would be included. And if they said it wasn't okay, it would be excluded. And that usually was pretty much where things landed. But last year, the SEC announced it's not going to decide these things anymore. So companies kind of have to decide, are they going to exclude the proposal or not? And if the company thinks it doesn't comply with the rules, they'll leave it off. And at that point, the shareholder's only option is to just bring a lawsuit.
Right.
And they have to actually sue and say, actually, the company's wrong and we're entitled. But you have to have resources to do that. And a lot of shareholders don't have the resources to do that. So the big change this proxy season is companies were basically given a free hand by the SEC to exclude shareholder proposals. And there's a study out now by a researcher at Harvard, Anna Toniolo, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And she found that at least some companies were really kind of taking advantage of this and excluding proposals that they really shouldn't have, kind of betting that the shareholder wasn't going to sue, which was very likely. So the SEC now has been sued over this change in policy. The Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility and As You Sow have both sued the SEC, saying that they can't just willy-nilly stop enforcing the rules on shareholder proposals anymore. But nothing's happened on that yet. I mean, that lawsuit's just getting started. But beyond that, this year, what we haven't seen new regulations, but we've seen proposed rules. And if these go through, they're going to be a really big deal. So the first one, the SEC is proposing to make quarterly reporting optional.
Right.
So the companies can choose whether they'll report quarterly or semi-annually. And we're recording this on July 6th. Today is actually the deadline for public comments. And
It is.
It is.
Wow.
Unless
We got to get on that. Guys, did you comment yet?
get around it.
Yeah.
But actually,
I just wrote no.
Yeah. Well,
Object.
I'm indifferent on this one.
Are you really? Why?
I don't know. I like all disclosure, of course, but I always, when I started in this field, I thought that the extreme attention on the short term was a negative thing, and to force companies to focus on short termism was bad for shareholders, bad for the stakeholders, and I don't know. I wonder. I'm not saying that the effects of this is somehow going to suddenly benefit long-term shareholders and stakeholders, but I do think one of the reasons why CEOs, for example, have gotten so rich is they've been able to kind of game the short-termism of their environment and kind of mess with the like this mess with share prices, and I don't know. I that's why I don't really know where I land on this one, but yeah.
Well, that's definitely the SEC's position. Like that part of the reason they think that this is an improvement is because it will make things less short term. And the argument, that you're seeing I'll say most of the public comments, the vast majority are coming in against, and
sure.
They disagree.
I understand that.
And one of the arguments is that it's not the quarterly reporting that inspires short-termism; it's projections that inspire short-termism, and that's what you can change. So, but the thing about comments, legally, it's not a vote. Like, it doesn't matter that the overwhelming majority of comments are against. The SEC is required to take into account like new facts and arguments and so forth, and take those seriously. But it's not required to take a tally. So the mere fact that all of these votes, most of the comments are against, that part isn't really what matters. What matters is whether they give new information that the SEC takes into account. So that's, unless they extend the deadline, which, by the way, two people on opposite sides of the groups on opposite sides of the aisle are asking for deadline extensions, because there's a lot more that's also in the pipeline, because what's flown more under the radar, and this one, the deadline for comments is later this month, there's a massive proposal to completely overhaul what companies have to report.
Right.
So under the current SEC system, bigger companies are subject to more disclosure requirements, and smaller companies disclose less, and bigger is based on the size of your public float. And the SEC wants to overhaul the thresholds so that more companies are considered smaller and have fewer reporting obligations.
Wow.
So
yeah.
So right now, if you have a float of over 700 million, that is the threshold for big. And that anyone with a float of over 700 million, they're subject to the full set of reporting requirements. The SEC wants to raise that to 2 billion. And statistically, that would mean that right now, 1/3 of reporting companies are over the threshold. If we move it up to 2 billion, then fewer than 20% would be in that largest category.
This was our original set of kind of wild predictions. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, that we're entering a drawdown of disclosure, right? We're gonna taper away into nothingness, and that's what scares me most, actually, about getting rid of the quarterly reporting, is that it's a slippery slope at this point. So it sets a precedent which makes me uncomfortable, but I think this unfortunately is the future of this area. It's just chip away at it.
Yeah, exactly. When you take this into account, I mean, like some of the comments, I mean, like the issue here is that not just the changes, and I'll talk a little bit more just briefly about what those are, but also the fact that they're massive changes and they're all being piled up at the exact same time,
right.
which one,
Clever.
I don't think this now 3-member SEC commission, supposed to be 5, is seriously considering all of the evidence. And the fact is that these are going to have interaction effects. And because it's like change everything now, that is the part that scares me the most. So this is what's going to happen if this goes through. All these companies that are no longer considered large, they no longer have shareholder votes on pay. They no longer have to have auditor attestations about internal controls. They only have to report on executive comp for the top 3 officers rather than the top 5. They're exempt from a lot of the compensation disclosures, and they could get rid of risk factor disclosures in their K's and
really?
Q's.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
So,
I don't really read those anyway. I probably should.
Well, they can subtly change. So one of the comment letters is about how, often they very subtly change. And this is the kind of thing that I assume like hedge funds are using computers to read. They very subtly change, and that's really telegraphs something that's going to come down the pike. So the justification for all of this, obviously from the SEC's perspective, is, oh no, we have all these reporting burdens, and they're so costly, and companies won't go public if we don't have these requirements. But there are comments, of course, that are arguing the SEC is ignoring all the benefits. So this one is my favorite. The SEC had proposed these changes, and it cites this academic study about how much companies have to pay for the auditor attestation about effectiveness of internal controls. And the SEC goes through, look, this academic study found these costs. It costs companies so much money to get the auditor attestation, so we should have fewer companies do it. Well, the authors of that study, the academics who wrote it, submitted a comment and said that their work was being mischaracterized.
Oh.
Oh.
Because, yes, they did identify these costs, but they also concluded that the benefits were 2 or 3 times larger than the costs. And the SEC just left that out. And the point
they didn't read the whole paper. They just
they only read the parts they wanted to read. And the point the academics made was that it's really the smaller companies that need the attestation because they're the ones who don't have as professionalized a system. This doesn't matter as much for the big companies. So you're doing the opposite of what you should be doing when you say the smaller companies don't have to do it.
But not only that, but what this burden, this terminology that they always use, it's a burden. How that's never a proven thing, right? It's just they're just playing around.
Companies just estimating their costs and so right.
Well,
but they just
when they estimate their costs, they don't do it relative to something, right? Like they just say, like they would say shareholder proposals cost are overly burdensome to pay for, but relative to CEO pay, you're talking about a
relative to everything. Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about? Like the costs aren't actually real. It's all just cloud cover, right? So really the question is. The SEC is very clearly tipping the scale towards corporate power and away from investor power, right? And the states are actually they're doing the exact same thing. It's the race to the bottom for what can we deregulate for investor rights and not corporate rights. But where does it? At what point does it end? At what point does the market become? It's already, according to our own data, it's already more than 20% totalitarian companies. Those are companies with like dual class shares, or classified boards, plus, like some sort of control structure, a founder on the board with a large stake. These are companies where there's no challenge, no real accountability from investors to begin with. At what point, when we hit like 50%, is it just a private market? Like at what point have we gone past the pale?
I know, and I keep saying, others are less concerned about it, but I think for me, part of the concern is there's so much indexing and shadow indexing and things like that, like all the market mechanisms are seem to be, atrophying. Like that there's just, you can't vote, and there's less information to base a sale on. You can't sell easily if you're indexed. You can't sue because the states are eroding those rights as well.
So trying to move you to Texas. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
of course.
So,
can I play wise ass here for a second?
Oh yes.
Now, the opposite end of and Matt, we talk about this all the time, and I know it especially frustrates you. So, according to the data that I've scraped together, we only have 9 say on pay packages that have failed outright so far, and there's basically very, very little action against pay at all. So, I actually had posed a question that I was going to ask later in the show. Why should anyone care anymore? Why should we care about say on pay anymore if the market's already basically eradicated it? And I'm not saying that I support getting rid of it, but I feel like the investor class is already ignoring it. So,
well, that same argument applied to proxy access and the ability to nominate your own shareholder, which has really only been used by a few activist investors, but was fought for by pension funds and asset managers over years and years, getting proxy access. I remember doing a report at MSCI back in the day with Rick Marshall and talking about proxy access as sort of a beta activism. Like the market is all pushing for the same governance request at many companies across the S&P 500 in order to create a situation where investors have that right. And then investors got the right and summarily ignored it.
And never did it anyway.
I'm not sure that's exactly true, because I think that universal proxy made proxy access less important. So, like if you
So
can use
instead
if you
of that,
yeah.
we got to universal proxy.
Yeah,
Okay.
like before a proxy, like so for example, I'm not sure it would have made a big difference for a lot of activists, but like the Starbucks ESG proxy contest, that might have been a proxy access thing if there wasn't a universal proxy situation.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a
But
possibility.
even then, we don't see we have yet to see a non-activist investor submit a director for election. We've yet to see a failed say on pay vote where they still didn't find a way to pay the CEO the same exact amount. We've yet to even see a director. In fact, this year in 2026, multiple directors got voted out. Only one or two actually left.
Oh, so,
Like that
so
high?
not that actually not the zombie director problem.
Right.
The zombie director problem is as large as it's ever been. And the ones that left were the Cracker Barrel political one and Brian Hemphill, who was like the first one voted out this season. And they only get voted out for attendance. Like there's no other vote.
Opposed
So
to share price.
our literal bare minimum expectation is go to a meeting. If not, then we'll vote against you. And even if we vote against you, it doesn't really matter because you're probably not going to leave anyway. Because they literally write, Damien pulls this in the proxy countdown all the time. They literally write in the 8K, we think it's in the best interest of shareholders if this director sticks around
Person stays.
after shareholders voted out that director. So I'm not sure that even having, and this is piling on the wise assness. I'm pro shareholder rights, and I'm not sure I understand exactly why we have them because the investors themselves haven't been using them.
Okay,
Only
you're
the
getting
activists
to-
use
you're
them.
getting-
Theoretically,
my
I get it. Yeah.
You're getting to my favorite subject, which Ann and I have talked about endlessly, which is everything. Man, everything is rational apathy.
I don't know that it's so rational apathy is the argument that the cost of doing it effectively outweighs the benefit and or
To your own portfolio, yeah.
to your own portfolio, right? Like, so your own individual benefit from doing this action is outweighed by not doing it and just sort of letting the market decide. But we have example after example after example in not capital markets, but in every other market. Like if you look at sports as a market, these if like teams had rational apathy, then what would happen would be the players would choose their friends. The teams wouldn't necessarily win. They'd all get paid more, and only the players win. That seems to be what's happening in the real markets. I know I'm getting off topic, but the idea of rational apathy to me is like an excuse for not doing something when all the academic research suggests that doing something actually has value. It just nobody wants to do it themselves.
And that's
still-
that's the heart of the issue.
But still, no one's answering my question. What if in our democratically held elections, for political offices, what if in every election, in the average election, one candidate got 95% support and the other candidate got 5% support? Would we care anymore? Would anyone? That's what's happening with directors. Is they get 95% of support. So I understand theoretically why it matters, and I fight for that. But I guess I'm just sort of maybe
You're
I'm
jaded.
losing hope.
You're
I am
jaded.
because what is the meaning of this vote? What are the meanings of these votes?
Right. I think out of 3,000 to 4,000 votes a year, there's going to be that small handful. It's shrank in the past few years, but there's going to be a small number where there's a lot at stake for the shareholders and so forth. And so all the factors kind of converge to make those votes relevant and valuable. That's kind of my immediate reaction to why people continue to even vote, because occasionally there's an optionality. You'll need the right and the opportunity to vote at some later point, so you want to kind of preserve it.
And let me ask you a question. How much of all the changes changed the way you teach? Have you had to tell the students by the way, you're learning a whole lot of stuff that A is likely to change and B, half the people don't care about anyway?
Yeah, well, I mean, once again, we haven't there's state law and there's federal, and I actually teach I have a SecReg class where I teach the SecReg changes, and those dramatic changes, it's a nightmare. I'm also on a casebook, and we have to rewrite the casebook every year. So those actually change that changes the lesson plan quite a bit. And I actually tell the students on day one, the securities laws are always changing. You're responsible for whatever the law happens to be on the last day of class. So I have definitely had situations where I handed out new rules and new statutes mid-semester. Like, whoops, it changed. Let's go back over it. But when I teach state law, like state corporate law, the story was mostly Delaware, and I pretty much was just teaching Delaware. Now, this year, for the first time, I actually gave them Texas and Model Business Corporation Act, and we really went through so that students could compare Delaware, Texas, Model Business Corporation Act, and they could get a sense of how those differ.
But not Nevada in the curriculum yet?
No, because Texas and Nevada are similar in many ways, and there's only so much time. So that's why I chose Texas.
All right, cool. Hey, there was one other thing that happened and then we have a lot to talk about related to shareholder proposals and so forth. There's some really interesting stuff going on there. But there was one other item I wanted to bring up before a break, and I'm almost reluctant to do it because Ann and I hate talking about it, which is, can you guess?
Elon Musk.
SpaceX.
It had to be Musk.
So there was, of course, with lots of juicy and potentially repellent attributes to it, an IPO. You know, the IPO market looks like it's thawed, has it not? And SpaceX went public, and that was about 5 weeks ago. I think 4 weeks ago now. So I was going to say that I know I didn't put it in an order for shares. The only way I'm going to become an owner of SpaceX is when they convert my Tesla share, when they acquire Tesla.
Which they will.
That was a landmark IPO. I mean, for bad and good reasons, but probably more bad.
What are the good reasons?
Yeah.
Okay, more bad.
No, I mean, do you? No, I'm willing to.
There's no reason.
Okay.
There's nothing good about this IPO.
I think on our show I called it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think I called it the beginning of the end because really because really this is like the general population, the market investors. We have finally accepted the most closed public company in the history of the world. Like there is no hope to have any access,
you're
to have any say.
Earlier iterations of this.
Well, but this one is truly
there was
buttoned up.
A lot of jumping up and down when Facebook went public.
With
its control structure.
And of course, we talk about that all the time too. But this is really we as a culture and a society, we used to kind of learn our lessons from worst practices and best practices, and we've had 20 years of complaining about Mark Zuckerberg and the ill effects of Facebook. We've looked at the corporate structure and we rip our hair out about it. So here we now have this other behemoth coming from this other egomaniac, and yet we do nothing to change anything. Like there are no sunset clauses. There's nothing. It's just a complete.
Well, because it's up in and Ann, we've talked about it, but I would welcome your comment on this. Is that in some respects, the SpaceX IPO was giving shareholders kind of what they want, which is some sort of hot IPO where they can compete over it. There's a sociology to this.
Stock.
Right, it's a meme stock, exactly.
Yeah.
Facebook.
But they can already bet on football.
Float meme stock.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it is.
So that's that also happened with some. The ownership structure is
right. I mean, to be fair, some of the limits on federal securities actions, those have yet to be tested, and it'll be some time before they are, because, let's assume he does not commit securities fraud on day one. So it's going to take some time, and Matt's kind of like, well, I don't know. It's going to. I know. I've already criticized the legal analysis in their registration statement, but. It's going to be some time before there is some kind of reason to bring a securities fraud action. And at that point, if another company doesn't do it first, all of these restrictions on securities class actions, those are going to be tested. And we don't quite know yet how those will play out. So we don't know if it's as locked up quite as tightly as they've tried to do.
The worst thing to me too was was it only Standard & Poor? Only the S&P didn't bow down and change all their
the
rules,
S&P
right?
500 yeah.
That was the most disheartening part of this too, is that we had established, criteria. Forget the criteria, forget it all. Let's just fast track this in. I mean,
and one of the things is how much that broke through in terms of public reporting. I mean, they get it wrong, but but Jimmy Kimmel was making it they just didn't quite describe how the indexing works,
right.
But like Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about it. Like,
did he?
Oh my God, Jimmy Kimmel made a joke
really?
about how
talking about a stock going into the index.
about SpaceX was going to be in everyone's 401k whether they liked it or
right.
not. And I'm seeing like headlines of like it's entering this index. How much are you exposed? I couldn't help it. I sent an email to Vanguard. It's please don't put it in the index, and they sent me back some kind of form letter. But 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 it was clear they were getting complaints, and so that idea that the rules changed for Musk personally, and the sense that it wasn't entirely based on like a meritorious reexamination of the rules, but specifically for Musk, that broke through in public reporting in a way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I still think though investors have abdicated their responsibility. I mean, like the lineup of Wall Street banks to get this. To eat the fees, to get this to market, including the contingency that they buy Grok as part of,
you have to subscribe, spend $5 or $10 million on a Grok subscription.
I mean, that was like a thing, analysts. and when you break down the business, and this, like Michael Berry did this, this was everywhere, right? Like everyone broke down the business and said, all you're really buying is HughesNet from 1997, which is like satellite internet, just done well. And everything else fails, right? Like everything else loses money. It's like a typical
It's a really
startup.
good satellite communication business. It's a break even or slightly better, thanks to the grace of NASA, space business, and a dumpster fire of an AI business.
An AI business, right? Like, and so much so that they bought a company, announced their intention to buy a company before going public, but couldn't announce the purchase of the company. And then the minute they went public, they announced the purchase of the company.
Right.
And there's no vote because Elon owns all the voting rights and shares and everything. And what I think it is like investors have basically just given up and said like, whatever, the market's just a meme now. But I also think it's like, isn't it peak founder pettiness? Like you have 80% of the voting power, but you also wrote in the fact that you choose 50% of the board separate of the 80%.
And that they can't fire him without a vote of his shares.
I mean,
like they locked up like the level of like it's not good enough to just have 80% of the voting power. It's also important that his shares specifically have to vote him out as CEO or director.
So what? I don't know if there's an easy way to answer this. What happened between the failed WeWork IPO that everyone mocked
something did happen
so vociferously that it got drummed out of existence? He got he walked off the plank into nowhere. How did we get from there to here? I don't.
Actually, I mean, like leaving aside Elon Musk and sort of faith that he's got a sort of built-in retail fan base that's going to drive the price of the stock, and everybody sort of has to follow that. There's actually people were asking me about that, and the law changed between WeWork and SpaceX, which is that when WeWork went public, it did not have the ability to give large investors an advance look at its registration statement. So the first time anyone saw the registration statement was at the same time the entire public saw it. But the law changed so that SpaceX could legally feel out large institutional investors and show the registration statement and show all the stuff and show the wacky structure. They were able to show that to large institutional investors before it was made public. Okay. And that meant they could really make sure that they had that locked in, and they knew what those orders were going to be.
They knew what the demand was going to be,
or
they had a much better idea of demand for shares. Yes, right.
That seems nuts.
It was absolutely.
I mean, not only is it nuts because, like, if you're a smaller investor, a smaller institution, you didn't get access. So there's already a break point at some point. Like, they're not giving it to Joe's Asset Management in, like in
This is BlackRock.
Duluth. But it's like they're showing it to BlackRock and Vanguard State Street.
Putting a $5 billion share order.
So already there's a top class and a bottom class of investor. But in SpaceX's case, you had the retail component that was way bigger anyway in terms of demand.
Bigger than usual.
But that was part. I mean, obviously, this is a lot of Keynesian beauty kind of situation that in a lot of institutions buying on the strength of what they expected what the retail demand would be, and they were right. Like, I couldn't get over it. The SpaceX page for their IPO had open a brokerage account, and it had a list of where you could links to multiple retail brokerage accounts where you could open an account so you could put it in order.
That's not how this usually works.
Yeah, it's nuts.
All right.
It's nuts.
Hey, we should probably take a little break here and then talk about a lot of the ESG proposal stuff. Everybody, does that make some sense?
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. We'll be back here momentarily at this crossover episode between shareholder primacy and Proxy Countdown.
Shareholder Primacy is brought to you by FreeFloatAnalytics.com, the only free database of corporate directors, their influence, and their performance. If you own a stock or retirement plan, go to FreeFloatAnalytics.com and look up which of your elected directors are performing well and which aren't. Use your vote in the alternative democracy and get your data at FreeFloatAnalytics.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Proxy Countdown, Shareholder Primacy Mid-Year Crossover. I'm Damian Rollis, back with Ann Lipton and Mike Levin from Shareholder Primacy, and of course, Matt Moscardi. Come on.
Why do I sound so sad?
I don't know. All right.
I don't know.
Let's let's look back at the 2026 proxy season. Let's do it.
Yes, please. So the one thing we didn't really talk about much in our first segment was shareholder proposals, which, merit a thorough review at kind of what happened. So much has changed. So and you guys have you have a lot of data on this. So I'd like to hear about it.
I'm going to push back on that. We really don't. I mean, mostly because there's just the nuance of this is just not as interesting as it used to be. So
okay.
The big takeaway, I suppose, is that proposal submissions fell from 951 last year to approximately 790 this year.
Ah, okay.
So what most people predicted, and I think including all three of you,
Yes.
The mainstream prediction was that we would see that all companies would exclude all proposals. Whereas
I came out and said that. So
right,
yeah.
I was skeptical about that, but maybe for the wrong reason. So the number is that about 70% of submissions went to a full vote. Yeah, Ann.
Oh no, I just go continue, but I have continue.
So. But the reason why they're saying that 70% of submissions went to full vote is that they were worried about litigation or some kind of investor backlash.
And there were some suits that were started over some of this.
But they went to a full vote, but they didn't all go to a full vote at the same time.
Meaning what?
Like as in, more companies were really careful about not excluding them earlier. And then later, they started excluding more. It was like they were getting used to the new system. And Anna Toniolo's paper, she finds it's really there was like company specific differences. Like there were some companies that were kind of like being very careful and being like, I'll just let them all through. But there were others that were being very aggressive about everything's ordinary business and we're not going to let that go to a vote.
Yeah, we saw that a lot with big tech companies. They would like Facebook Meta still had like 13 proposals, right? Alphabet, the same. So
yeah, the companies where they had dual class shares and it didn't matter.
So it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You think it doesn't matter, but Elon Musk now is dual class at SpaceX, and he still is putting like a threshold for people to be able to. Still
but actually, to the point of that paper, right? Like the early data that we did earlier this year, we haven't updated it. There was actually a correlation with the law firms that were submitting.
Really?
Yeah, like certain law firms were much more aggressive about submissions than others, and that's across company, just same firm across companies. So we would see the same names pop up. Now that's not like an empirical study. Like we didn't do, not all 900, but we did look at, earlier in the season when we saw who was getting excluded and why. We saw John Chevedden was over targeted for exclusion and no actions, and certain law firms actually like overlapped with their willingness to submit requests for no action or like whatever the process is. Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
So
we got,
go ahead, Mike.
We got about roughly close to 1,000 last year, almost 800 this year. Only 70% went to a vote, which is about, I think that's close to what we'd seen before.
Yeah, it's higher than most people predicted.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the main point. Okay. Yeah. So, and then what happened from there?
Overall support dropped. So only about 7 to 8% of proposals actually achieved majority support. We've been reporting on this every week on Proxy Countdown. Like nothing's winning. But the big takeaway I thought was that it was really dominated by, to me, really two groups. Mostly like the old-fashioned corporate governance submitters, the John Cheveddens, the Tim McRitchies.
Yeah.
50% of all submissions were basically from the same two people. Right. What you really saw was a complete drop-off of E&S issues, environmental and social. Places like As You Sow basically disappeared. I mean, for the most part.
All those folks were just,
yeah. And the other group that dominated was what I call the hate proposals or the anti-ESG proposals. So this was from the groups like Boyer Research, the National
Center for Legal
Review. Now, they were tricky. So they put up a big slew of hateful proposals. Usually they were mad about trans people or something. But and those routinely got way less than 1% support, which surprises nobody. But what they also did, and I know, Matt, you hated this, and I actually hate it too because I know they're jerry-rigging the system. They magically became old-fashioned ESG analysts.
Can somebody explain that to me? I don't understand that.
I think it's and Matt, you explain it because I think we know the answer.
I might actually have to take some credit for it. So I talked to somebody personally. Okay. Like somebody from one of those groups, one of the like executive directors of one of those groups reached out to me and we talked. We had like an hour-long conversation. And one of the things that I said, because we did some arguing about like, the nature of these proposals and like, it was some was combative, but some was like actually him asking me questions about, the process and the thinking around shareholder proposals. And I said, one of the things I said to him was, the thing that, the As You Sows of the world mastered was an ask that gave investors something. That wasn't an ask. It wasn't overtly political. It wasn't like ad hoc ask. Like asking Disney to talk about the number of guests that were trans is something that you're only going to ask Disney about. I said, investors want better disclosure in general. So if you make an ask that's like, give me your scope 1 and 2 carbon, you can make that ask everywhere. And the more you get it, the more investors like that data, use that data, or even choose to ignore that data, but it's available to them. So your asks should actually be something that an investor can use. And what we saw happen was they flipped from, and I think it happened for two reasons. One, to make a coherent ask everywhere. They focus more on governance issues, particularly independent chairs. Right. They really like the idea of an independent chair. Yep. And two, I think they also realize that coherent ask gets more support on average and allows them to go to their donors because they are all 501c3s.
Absolutely.
And they tell their donors our average vote for has increased year over year.
Okay, because some of these I could not figure out why National Center for Public Policy Research is asking like scope 1 and 2 and climate disclosures. Like that just seemed very antithetical to their mission.
It is, absolutely is.
It is. And it's meant to drive what we do know is the shareholder proposals that were submitted by John Chevedden and Jim McRitchie get an average level of support that's way higher no matter what, because we know investors vote proponents more than proposals. The investors trust a proponent who's been doing this for a really long time. They know the asks. They generally know who they are. There are pseudo networks of these individuals who like show up at conferences. They roughly know each other. They trust each other, whatever. But they don't trust these anti-ESG proponents at all. They're kind of outside the zeitgeist. The exact same proposal submitted by John Chevedden will get higher support than National Center for Public Policy Research, even if it's copy pasted for like independent chair or something like that. We know that the Chevedden will get more support, but they also know that the ask itself will get more support than saying company ABC hates trans people, vote for hating trans people. That'll get less than 1%. So they can use these votes, they jury rig effectively the vote for donor purposes, and we can look at the donor filings and see it.
Wow. Yeah, because I was thinking maybe they just were trying to build up a cred so that then for other kinds of
they're trying to manage. They have multiple constituencies, and one of their constituencies is donors. That's not a whole lot different. I do know that that's how it works for some of the main E&S
the ESG, yes, absolutely.
Proponents is that they have a donor base.
Yeah,
and they want to see
progress. Improvement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. They always want to see progress. So, and that progress can be either in the type of ask. We're asking for more and more. Now we're asking for scope 3. We ask for scope 1 and 2, or it could be in the level of support.
Voting outcomes.
The level of support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I'll just really quickly on the drop off, and just to the drop off. I see those kinds of groups. This gets back to I think what was said earlier. About, I think, there's been so much regulatory hostility from the Trump administration towards ESG stuff. I think those proponents think shareholders aren't going to vote for it. Not even whether they want it or not isn't really the issue. The issue is that they know that, Ken Paxton will file a civil investigative demand if they vote in favor of an environmental proposal. So they're not going to vote in favor of an environmental proposal. So as you so doesn't make the proposal. I think that's what's going on.
Well, let's not forget that Exxon suing its shareholders.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, yeah, but that was really specific. I mean, that was about on a very specific claim, and the claim was you are violating the rule that says you can't resubmit the same proposal. That's not always going to be the issue. Especially now that you could just,
A lot of these, when you read the proposals year over year, a lot of them read like resubmissions.
Well, they are resubmissions.
But you're allowed to resubmit if you hit certain voting thresholds.
Right. Well, Exxon, speaking of Exxon was overtly snarky this year. They added into in the proxy statement, they added asides to the titles of these proposals saying this one that has failed 20 times in a row and really sucks.
So little Greek chorus.
Yes, exactly.
It was really good. It's like vote for proposal 5. Here's proposal 5. Shareholder proponent asks for climate proposal that has failed over and over and over again, and nobody should vote for. The title.
You make your own decision on this one.
So
that's great.
Moving on. Okay, so the large majority again were sort of these 50% were these old-fashioned corporate governance. The only thing I would say that is new, whether it's interesting or not, I don't know, are sort of these AI ethical governance questions. And we have a interesting moment here for shareholder proponents, which is that the general population on the left and right seem to both hate AI. They hate data centers. I don't know. This is an area that might stick more in the future. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this.
Just to be clear, we're not talking about how AI is used like in activism or governance. This is activist or proposals about a company's relationship to and use of AI.
Well, it could be anything. It could be could be data centers. It could be algorithmic transparency. It could be data privacy. But this might be one of the only ones that the the population agrees with. I don't.
Yeah,
so
well, it's interesting because the Trump administration is obviously doesn't want to regulate at all, but the states, both red and blue, there's just general groundswell of concern.
Yes. Well, it's funny you say that. They don't want to regulate it, but they want to take an ownership interest in it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is.
Right.
Pay. We can move on quickly out because I know we've been already going long on this show. Pay, and I already hinted at this earlier. I would say nothing is happening in pay.
No, it's status quo. I mean, the pay
Right.
votes are
Even
as good
worse.
as they've been. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So even worse, this study I looked at said that major pay revolts, which is less than 70% support, shrank to 44 out of 1,100 companies. So that's why I posed the question earlier. Not that I'm suggesting getting rid of these votes, but what does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and my problem with Sam Pay is it's precatory. It's a completely advisory vote. It's a way of kind of diagnosing shareholder sentiment, but it doesn't really have any. The only practical impact has to do with CEO ego, where if their votes aren't quite like some others, they start to run around and talk to a bunch of shareholders and see what can we do a little better. But there's no real concrete impact.
No,
that
in fact,
these pay votes have.
We spent a long time. I don't know if you remember the name of the company, Matt. I don't. We spent a long time on our last show talking about this one particular company that got like 45% against last year, and I spent hours looking at how they tweaked the plan. And the end result was that the CEO got a raise, got even more equity, and they changed the language and some of the plan. But if you did the math, it didn't.
It just came out of the same place.
It didn't hurt him at all.
No, it did. It cost him $1 million in total summary comp, from $35 million to $34 million.
But he got more equity.
But he got like 9x the equity. So really painful.
I have a question. I mean, obviously, leaving aside those kinds of games, just in terms of where shareholder voting is on this. I mean, is this just like a bull market situation? Like, I mean, in general, shareholders vote against pay when they don't like stock prices, and they vote for pay when they do like stock prices. And my question is like, in the next market crash, will we see more rejections of pay packages?
Well, that could be. I mean, the only time I've ever noticed anything that matters in this world is at smaller cap companies. So, and it's a direct correlation to a failed share price. And when that share price is low, they vote against everything. So
Right.
I don't know why it matters. Maybe Mike would know more. I don't know why they pay attention more at a smaller cap company.
I haven't. Usually, there's so many different factors in the small caps. I was going to say that the institutional holdings vary, but that's not always true.
Not always true, right?
Yeah, right. So part of it is they don't get quite the coverage. They don't have the equity analyst followings and so forth. So there's a lot of potential things that could be going on there, and I confess to not having a really clear idea about why. So.
I mean, well, one thing is eerily consistent that no one votes against the people who set the pay. That is never ever happens.
Right.
So.
I mean, director votes. But you said that at the top of the show.
Yeah. So as long as we're consistent, we hate the pay. We love the people who said it, though.
And we track this weekly. There is absolutely zero correlation between the people who create the policy and the say on pay vote. We can't quite. Have we figured that one out, Matt? I don't understand that one.
I think people can't find the against button for directors.
But they will.
Lost.
They will penalize the chairs of, say, nomination committees if there aren't enough women on the board. In fact, we covered one at the conference. I already forgot the name of the conference.
ISS.
The
CII?
The
CII conference.
Forgive me, CII,
conference.
if you're listening. Where they, in fact, even voted against the only woman on the board because she was the chair of the nomination committee that didn't have enough women on the board. So they're really locked into that idea. But the only other thing I wanted to cover here, does anyone else have anything to say about the high director support before I move on? No.
Disappointing. That's all.
The other thing I was looking at this year, which I think is potentially interesting, is what's going on with proxy advisors. So institutional investors are starting to publicly break away from your ISSs and your Glass Lewis's, relying on their own kind of internal systems. And when I think what that really means is that they're letting AI create voting systems for them. But I think this is sort of an important moment. There's something else called this ISS penalty, which is shrinking. So the ISS penalty is basically this. In 2021, ISS against recommendations on say on pay votes dragged down company support by an average of 30 percentage points. This year, that penalty shrank to 20 percentage points. So my overall statement here is that the effects of your ISSs and Glass Lewis's are maybe starting to go away. In fact, let's not forget Exxon creating its own, retail auto vote system. Right. So there is some kind of interesting shifts going on here. Matt, I know you want to say something.
Well, I feel like investors realized that how easy it was. I mean, the important number is actually the percentage of time that ISS and Glass Lewis say vote with management, right? And I think investors in general realized it's way cheaper to just voting with management 98% of the time is not that hard. Why are we paying two people to tell us to do that?
Right? I mean, we could talk about like what they're using instead, but for a lot of investors, this is part of, they need that at least to show compliance with fiduciary obligations and so forth.
It's insurance.
I think, they're going to want to use some kind of advisor unless, they build their own kinds of tools.
Right, and that's what JP
which I
Morgan
think is what
Chase
they're doing.
said they're doing. Is they're building
they're building those AI tools so that they can say, effectively, we have our own tool in-house that uses data and comes up with a recommendation. They are likely to keep paying one of ISS or Glass Lewis, and it's a race to the bottom to keep those accounts, right? So ISS and Glass Lewis are forced to both say no less and cost less because they're expensive.
Well, they're doing different things. So like Glass Lewis is going to move to a completely non-recommendation model, which, looks like to some extent, a way of getting out from under some of the regulatory pressure they're under. So their plan is to just, help them develop their custom policies so that they're not really making recommendations. It's just the investor
They're
says,
just supplying data and doing analytics.
The data.
Right.
But the really interesting thing, though, is you guys keep pointing out like these inconsistent things, like I vote for the committee that recommended that set the pay, even though I vote against the pay. I wonder if like a world with custom policies is one that actually gets at that more. If those are sort of built in, if investors build that into their platforms, into their set of choices.
And because then they can, mix it in with, share price performance or other types of governance factors and so forth. Because, part of the problem is that, the shareholder vote is a sort of a singular action that combines a whole lot of sentiments about what's going on in a company, and so.
But the funny
you could
part
vote against
is,
pay, but vote for the comp committee because maybe there's other things that comp committee director had in their favor or something.
I saw an early study where they designed an AI model to take in more information and give vote recommendations. And what they found in the early AI models was they said the recommendations were to vote against more directors and management proposals.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
Than investors were doing, which would mean, and we're not seeing that in the data. We're seeing this like same, if not more, support for management. Which would suggest that, like, saying you have an AI model is as simple as voting with management in every situation that isn't an activist situation. Then you do some due diligence. So it'll be interesting to see over the next, 2 years whether or not these air quote AI models are actually used and how they're used or how they're tweaked to basically just have the same outcomes.
Or who sues who first because the AI model
there's that too.
Did something crazy. Okay, so I'm going to hand off to you, Matt, but I do have some data based on what you just said. So the interest, and this is all just to say that we're the fight against ISS and Glass Lewis is working. Like the fight in our the political theater of railing against ESG seems to be working. So, in fact, this year, ISS backed 48% of all proposals in 2026, which is way up from last year when they supported 34%, but it had no impact. So people are they're not listening like they used to listen. So
Right.
I'm
Not paying
going
as
to,
much attention. Yeah.
I have more that I'm not going to get to because we need to roll
to
on.
kind of move
so
on.
Matt,
Yeah, right.
why don't you finish this up?
I'm going to do a speed round to end this. A speed round of a couple of questions. I think there's about 6 questions here where it's just yes, no, did it matter? And we've answered some of it, but we'll do a speed round. And then a couple of questions that we don't have to answer now, but we'll throw out to the universe.
Well, we'll do a
upcoming.
crossover in January.
We got another crossover for December,
happy and
January
cold.
coming up anyway. All right. So let's start with some of the did it matters. Ready? No action, basically set to ignore by the SEC. Did it matter in 2026?
I say yes.
I think it did it. Some companies and it will matter more going forward. But I think
It will
some companies
matter
got
more.
very aggressive.
Damien?
Well, but
Yeah, I agree with Ann. I think what it means is more for the entire. I'm pulling back and looking at the entire landscape of it. Is absolutely consequential. What it means going forward. But did it matter like year on year? I'm not too sure.
Nah, maybe not.
It mattered, but the overall effect of it is massive.
So it hasn't mattered quite yet, but it will matter.
Well, we're in a very Ann talked about it at the beginning, just the sheer amount of proposed changes piled on top of each other, this sort of just chaotic, effect of deregulating and tearing it all down. I think that's what really matters.
All right. So in that vein, Dexit, which the early conversation around Dexit was Delaware's just fine, right? Like there's not a big giant move. And this was back in, last April. We're talking about Dexit's a talking point, but does it really matter? Now, this season done, or this voting AGM period done, did Dexit matter?
I think it. I mean, for me, what I'm looking at is like, statistically, I don't know that there's that much movement out of Delaware, but it's not that. It's how Delaware responded. It's that Delaware responded by dramatically changing its law. I think its judges are probably going to be more, treat challenges to board action more gingerly, and it matters in that sense.
Absolutely.
All right.
That sounds like everyone agrees. Then how about the anti-ESG movement, the lawsuits against the states, the shareholder proposal rise, like
No,
the anti-ESG
that's-
movement, did it matter?
Nope.
Yeah, because everybody
Not the
yeah.
anti-ESG proposals. The
whole
opposing
the
ESG
right fight
proposals.
against
Oh yeah, I'm
ESG.
sorry,
Yeah.
I misunderstood. Yes, absolutely, it did matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the lawsuits are like, right now, like the states are trying to like clip proxy advisors' wings because of ESG, and all that's failing. But that's not the point. The point is it's getting people to investors to try to back off ESG and not vote for it, and ISS changed its policy recommendations on ESG, all that kind of thing. So it's,
and that's important because it's just what you said about Dexit, Ann, is that the right has won the political theater aspect of this because the ESG world, whoever that is, they don't fight back on any level. They don't create talking
They don't have
points.
the resources. They don't. They can't.
Okay, but maybe that's the case. But there are clever ways to do things that don't cost a lot of money. But
Well, yes, and again, that gets to my contention that the problem with precatory proposals isn't the proposals; it's the precatory part. Is that it's a community that doesn't push its agenda as hard as it could in the most effective ways.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, let's move on to other egregious things. Musk's pay package, which passed just in this last season at Tesla,
which
right?
very one.
And now we have the SpaceX
Did it matter to
one.
Musk? No, he moved on. He did the SpaceX side.
But that package, we said in our December crossover show that that there was a potential for other mini Musk packages.
And it happened. There's been
and
half a dozen other mega
It's right.
caps
It doesn't matter.
that
I think
have done it. I mean, Ryan Cohen. I can't remember. Was it Ryan Cohen who?
Yes.
Yeah.
who came
Although
up
he's
with this
pulling it back
$35
at
billion
GameStop.
payback. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of copycats that are coming out.
But he's taking it off the table because he's desperate to buy.
But
eBay.
there were a bunch of other tech
No, you're right. You're right.
CEOs and others that have said,
No, no.
okay, we're going to set these audacious goals.
Not only
But they
that,
didn't
Hopefully I'll
hit
get-
them though. So
Oh no! Wait a second. I mean, it
Well, I
wasn't
think
clear
what's
that Musk
worse-
was either. So
what's worse?
well, he
and
will be if SpaceX buys Tesla though.
What I think is
if-
that. Oh, go ahead.
No. Well, no. If it matters in this sense, if SpaceX buys Tesla, depending on the price that SpaceX pays, his pay package at Tesla is triggered, so he gets more shares. The more.
Oh yeah,
SpaceX
he'll
pays
yeah
for
the
Tesla.
Tesla pay package will pay out, but it's not because the market loves their
Right. No,
the
it'll be
business.
because SpaceX pays 2.5 trillion for Tesla, then he gets another 70-something million Tesla shares.
right.
Here's what I think is worse: is that what it's done is it's degraded the market of people caring, right? So
Yeah.
Musk gets his pay package. So many people support it, and now say on pay, everyone supports pay, and now what we're seeing is companies off proxy, off policy. They're not even part of the policy. They're handing out massive retention awards because they know no one's going to care. No one's going to fight back. And there's of course,
And you
see
can't
in
sue
pay,
over it now. Right?
and in pay, you see this more than anywhere. The copycat effect is it's just the domino effect is like a fire in Colorado. Sorry, Ann, but because that everyone just copies it. So because no one's going to do anything, they know that no one's going to push back.
All right, two more. Ready? This one I think we can agree on, and maybe in all the same direction. Exempt solicitations are dead, except for the super rich. Does it matter? Did it matter?
No, absolutely
Yes.
not. They never mattered before.
I
They
thought it'd be-
do. And I'm going to now cite the paper because I knew you were going to ask this
Yes,
question.
do
I
it.
saw in the notes. It's called "Is There Power Outside the Proxy? Evidence from Exempt Solicitations." And it's actually been online for a while, but they just updated it. And it shows that institutional investors access those exempt solicitations and it affects voting outcomes.
Wow, I like that. Now
We
that,
go down on that one.
I'm surprised, but
it
I have to go read
exists.
that
It's a
now.
real
yeah,
paper.
that touches me personally. I would have said it was an easy no.
I would have thought so too, but there's data. I am not an
There's some-
empiricist,
there's
so
some
I'll let
evidence.
someone else decide if they want to dig
I
into
love
it.
being proven wrong. Finally, Jay Hogue, the Netflix director.
Oh, the Netflix director. He
Well,
didn't
no,
attend
now
enough
chair.
meetings, so-
Now chair.
Oh, he's
now
board
chair.
now?
He's
He was
chair
lead
of
indep-
Netflix.
lead independent
Had
director,
the
now he's chair.
biggest jump in 2025, 74% against vote to 93% for vote in 2026. 2025,
He
failed.
attended more meetings. I
He
guess.
attended
Yeah,
one
one more
Which I
meeting.
found out
meeting.
One.
from your newsletter.
One more meeting is what he attended.
Yep.
Did it matter? Attending that one meeting, did it matter?
Well, it mattered to his vote, I guess, but it didn't matter to the board quality and how Netflix is done. Netflix has much bigger problems in their stock.
That's what I love about it. I love that.
Do they?
Well,
I mean,
they-
they're doing fine, but it's still, they're
Okay.
trying to look for a deal. Remember, they were the ones who were trying to buy Paramount,
Yeah, and I think they're
and that fell
probably
through,
happy they
so
didn't.
They're trying.
Yeah, but they got a break fee.
but they got a break fee. But now they're that's the I don't follow media too hard, but they're everyone's urging Reed Hastings to go try to find a deal. So anyway,
Reed Hastings, who's no longer
Who
at
supposedly
Netflix,
doesn't work for the
apparently.
company.
Ted
Doesn't
Sarandos.
work there,
I can't
right?
remember the
Like,
I get it.
No,
well,
you said it
no,
right. You said it right.
they're definitely talking to Reed Hastings.
Yes,
like
they are.
they have
right.
co-CEOs who basically just call up Reed when they have a problem. That's my speed round 6 questions, and just a couple of thoughts into 2026 and 2027. But until next time we meet, I think on my mind, in a non-activist situation, does anything except attendance matter in a director vote? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. But
share price too. Share price.
we have
For smaller
seen
cap
zero
companies, yeah.
correlation between share price and director votes in the absence of an activist. When there's an activist,
Right.
yes,
Sure. Right.
There's no activist. Everyone's 96% for. Are activist shareholder proposals dead? Right, like there were a lot of activist shareholder proposals. Like TRIP-Wilson was trying to declassify
yeah.
the board. Is that going to be like a dead space? Is it all going to have to be
Yeah.
backroom negotiated?
Yeah, probably. They weren't really as big a deal as they could have been with with activists. So, but yeah, especially under 14A8.
I will say this:
you're going to have a problem with it. Go ahead.
I will say this, Matt. The only way this changes is that if the general public realizes what they are and they fuse their hatred for things like data centers and AI and use this mechanism to do something splashy, use social media to gain attention for issues like this, then anything could change. I mean, again, you finally have an issue that everyone can agree with. It's a massive issue, and so I don't know. I mean, it just depends if people open their eyes.
I think the answer is
No.
yes or dead. I'll end with this final thought for 2026, 2027, and that is AI, China, AI, China, 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 AI, China, AI,
Sorry,
China.
I don't understand.
2027 wrapped. I just wrapped
All right,
it for
cool.
you. We don't have to talk
Thank
about
you.
Very
All right,
boring.
We'll see everybody again. Another crossover sometime soon. We have a lot to talk about between then and now. So let's let our followers here move on to some other stuff. How about that? This is
Set them free.
Shareholder Primacy and also Proxy Countdown. Shareholder Primacy is hosted by Ann Lipton and me, Mike Levin. I'm an independent activist investor and advisor to investors about their activist situations. Ann is professor of law and the Lawrence W. Demuth Chair of Business Law at the University of Colorado Law School. And you can find me, Mike, at theactivistinvestor.com and Ann at law.colorado.edu. As we said, this is also Proxy Countdown with Matt and Damien. They are at freefloat.LLC for your data. Some of the best board data out there. Our podcast is produced and distributed by our good friend here, Matt Muscardi at Free Float Media. There he is. Thanks for listening to this wonderful crossover. We will talk again soon.